अबे स्टार्ट करो भाई, कब तक होगी?
10 घंटे लगा रहे हैं ये लोग।
Parth, is the audio working? I'm speaking now. Can you hear me?
अबे भाई स्टार्ट कर दो, बहुत देर होगी।
अरे बैंचो चुप कर. This for the stream.
Good evening, everyone. SARC welcomes you to today's talk on summer internships in the IT sector. Our speakers today are some of our seniors who you may already be familiar with. They'll go in depth to explain the various steps in landing an internship and answer any queries you have as well. Our first speaker is Niranjan Rajiv. He is currently one of the coordinators of Algomaniacs and a software intern at Google. Niranjan also participated in the esteemed ICPC Asia West Continent Final. Today, he'll be guiding us through the process of preparing for a summer internship. Niranjan, you can take the stage.
Okay, hi guys, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Well, I'll be sharing my screen. Or let me know once it's visible. Okay, cool. Um, hi, let me just introduce myself. I am Niranjan Rajiv. I am done with my third year, going to my fourth year now, and I'm currently interning at Google. And yeah, I think rest of the things Nilay has already talked about. So I'll start with the session. So I'll be talking about how to prep for SIPs and some tips, some personal tips that I have for y'all. So, yeah. So obviously, I'm guessing that all of y'all know how important DSA is. So just reiterating on that, every SIP company does ask DSA in their coding rounds and in their interviews. So doing DSA is a must. And I've mentioned a rough list of topics here, and these topics are a must do if you want to crack an SIP. Most of the companies in their coding rounds do ask this. For example, in Google, we had binary search. We had a question on binary search, a question on DP, a question on graph, and yeah, and in the interviews also, I had a binary search question and a question on trees. So these topics are extremely important. So make sure you cover all of them. And the next point is how to cover these topics. So for learning a topic, there's a ton of resources out there. You can check out YouTube videos, articles. I've mentioned some of the most common sites on the right side here: GFG, LeetCode, InterviewBet, Code Forces. There's even videos like you can follow Striver's SB sheet. He has a lot of video solutions for and a bunch of questions, and you can follow those for topic-wise questions. So it's very important that while you are solving questions of a particular topic, you don't just mock up the solutions. Suppose if you're solving Striver sheet, don't just look at the question, see the solution, and just mug it up and solve. Make sure you are thoroughly understanding what's exactly happening, why you are using a particular data structure or an algorithm for the question, and make sure like solve enough questions till you are able to solve any new question that comes on that topic.
YouTube link
So suppose if you're solving binary search, like if you're solving like 5, 6, 7 questions, you can only move on to the next topic once you are very comfortable that you will be able to solve a new question on that topic. So coming to platforms, you can go through any of these platforms and do whatever suits you. In the end, you just need to be thorough at you need to be able to solve the questions. So InterviewBit has like a pretty good set of questions. LeetCode obviously is the database of all DSA related questions, and you'll find almost all questions on LeetCode. And GFG has like a ton of articles and a lot of questions. And yeah, so keep keep yourself motivated and keep solving questions consistently. I'll talk about mindset for some time because I feel that's not talked about much. It's very important to have a positive mindset throughout this whole process. You need to have a long-term plan about like a month and a week. Like I'll complete these topics in a week. By this month, I'll complete these topics. But you have to tackle one day at a time. Don't stress about it too much. Each day have like a certain number of questions you want to do or like certain topics you want to finish, and just focus on doing that on that particular day so that you don't get stressed about the like it can get daunting because it is a very extensive topics and there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. And in the beginning you will find it difficult. Everyone goes through this phase. Like the first time you're solving questions, it might be slow. First time you're solving questions of a particular topic, you might not be able to solve it. You might have to look at the solutions, but that's totally fine because everyone goes through it. That's the learning process. You need to just keep working hard and you'll eventually find your rhythm. And yeah, so keep that in mind. Anytime you're feeling difficult, don't just stop there. It is everyone goes through this. So continue, like keep working hard and you'll find your rhythm. And don't stress about external factors. So you might hear from seniors and your friends, and you might get stressed about the companies that are coming. Maybe better companies are coming at some other college or whatever. Don't take too much stress about this because these are not in your hands. External factors are not in your hands, so there's no point of stressing about them. Just focus on your prep and how much prepared you can be, and that's all you have to worry about. Because there's like if you waste your time and energy stressing about this and ranting about these external factors, you're just going to slow down your prep. So make sure to keep aside. Like I understand that a lot of y'all will feel like stressing about them, but just keep them aside and try to focus on your prep only. And yeah, you will feel anxious and tensed sometimes, and maybe all the time. But you need to, like it's normal. Everyone goes through it. So make sure you talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to seniors, and I'm sure they'll be able to guide you and help you throughout the whole process. And if you put in the efforts, opportunities will come to you no matter what, no matter where you are, who you are. If you put in the efforts and put in hard work, opportunities will come to you. So it's don't really worry about external factors and just focus on your prep. And yeah, like I said, have a healthy friend group and seniors who can motivate and guide you because that's extremely important. And yeah, general tips. If you haven't started now, please start. It's never too late. You still have a lot of time, and companies do come throughout your entire semester, and even some companies come in the second semester as well. So it doesn't matter how late you are. If you haven't started already, do start. And if you already have been doing well, continue doing it because you're in the last bit of it now. So there's no point in slowing down now. Try to be consistent. Try to get a rhythm. And the prep that you do right now will obviously help in placements also. The SIP process is very similar to the placement process. You'll have a coding round and interviews and sorts, and it's going to be the same thing. At least in IT, you'll have the same DSA. Maybe in placements, they will have more fundamentals asked, but in SIP, it's mainly DSA. So the DSA that you do right now will surely help in your placements as well. So make sure to use that as motivation. And yeah, just reiterating on the old point that if you find it difficult initially, just spend some more time and eventually you'll understand it. And then make a small group with your friends. I think this is really important because you need that small peer group who motivates you and you can solve each other's doubts. This will help you stay in the loop, and whenever you're feeling down or not motivated, you can look at them and keep them accountable for you. So these having a small group of friends for this is very important. And yeah, always feel free to reach out to your seniors and peers. We are always here to help you, and everyone goes through the same process. We understand that it might be difficult and stuff, so we are always there for you. And yeah, SIP mil jayega if you work hard enough. All the best. That's all from my side. I think we'll have a Q&A after this. Over to Nilay. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Niranjan. Our second speaker is the current president of ASCI, Ayush Bhardwaj. He is currently pursuing an internship at Arista Networks and was previously a research intern at MIT Media Lab. He will be talking about resume building and how it affects your SIP. Ayush, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. I think am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So before delving into the resume thing, I think Niranjan has covered the presentation part beautifully. Like, can I get a quick raise of hands if you are from first year, 2027 graduating batch? Okay. So I assume majority are of you are from 2022 batch. Okay, cool. Cool. You can lower your hands now. Also, like, can you raise your hand if you are not from CS? Okay, cool, good. So let me first brief you about the actual SIP process before dwelling into resume. So you might be seeing a superset thingy setup. This is for 2022 batch, the one people who joined in 2022. You might have set up your superset, and you'll start receiving mails from PU regarding the shop, Uber, Google, Microsoft, and other such companies. So typically, you have uh, I would say around 3 rounds to the process. First round is usually the online assessment or the coding round, and then you have 2 follow-up rounds, which are technical interviews. Sometimes you may have an additional round, that is the resume shortlisting, but mostly you will find these 3 rounds. And all of these rounds are like very heavily focused towards DSA. And some of the companies do ask computer science fundamentals. And when I say computer science fundamentals, I mean OOPS and DBMS for SIP. So these are the few things apart from DSA that you also need to take care of. The pattern is almost the same. The coding round is completely DSA. The interview rounds are a mix of DSA and the CS fundamentals. So now I'll quickly share my screen. Is my screen visible? Yeah, so I think, yeah, Nilay already introduced me, but these are some organizations that I have been associated with. This year I'm working at Arista and I'm doing my Google Summer of Code in parallel. So if I want to know about you in professional context, so resume is the only possible and viable way, and it's important first impression and often last one if it's not good enough. And also remember this point. This point is not applicable for on campus for SIPs. Since you've just completed 2 years of engineering and barely 1 year of major, companies don't expect that much from you. So resume does not play a role. In fact, I can go on to say, even for placements, resume plays some role, but majority is your hard computer science skills. That is your CS fundamentals and DSA. But for any off-campus purpose, resume is really, really important. Like without having a good and a professional resume, you won't even get any replies if you like try for off-campus internships. So these are the few subheadings that you might find in your resume. Subheadings are not limited to this. They can be more too, but usually these are the ones that I have seen across seniors' resumes and what a common resume might have. And it's not necessary that you might have all of the headings. You might have some of them, you might not have others. Let's say, for example, you might not have achievements. Let's say you don't have any national level kind of achievements, but you have a lot of internship experience in projects, so you can avoid this session altogether. So yeah, so this is not an exhaustive list, but a rough list of subheadings that our resume might contain. So now I'll give you an overview of what all can come under one section. So let's start in the order. So I'll first go over the achievements. So when I say achievements, this is usually implied that I'm talking about scholastic achievements, as in your ranks in some hackathons, your academic credentials. JE rank and advanced rank can be, depending on how good they are, and depending on like how much white space you have in your resume. And then if you're getting some scholarship from the government or from some organization, that can be it. For people who are into competitive programming, the competitive programming ranks can be one of things mentioned here. But this is not implied for sports related achievements. This is strictly scholastic, academic, and I would say more towards professional. And this is usually the way of representing it. This is taken from resumes of our seniors. Okay. So now regarding internship and work experience, now the first year kids might not have any internship work experience, and that's completely fine. You can avoid this section. For the second year students, this is a section where you can fill your PS thing. So if you see this research intern thing, this is one of the guy's PS. So he has beautifully summarized the work he has done in 2 points. Consistency is actually really important while building a resume. So if you see, none of the lines in any of these sections are overflowing to the next line. They are very consistent. And yeah, so in this, you normally, when work experience implied, you have been working for some other organization. But let's say there are some on-campus labs too, like Dash Lab being one of them. And there's a cognitive neuroscience lab. So sometimes you can fill those experiences too in this work experience part. But yeah, for the second years, it should be mostly PS and any other off-campus internships that you would have done. Now regarding projects, so before starting how to represent them on a resume, I would like to start with how to get projects on a resume. So this project that you see over here, so the OOP course, at least the way it was taught at our time, had a project component. So you can just include that project, and there are a lot of other course projects too. This what you see, this is one of the SOP projects. So an SOP can easily come under both work experience and a project, depending on whether it's under a lab, under an organization, or under an individual. In this case, I have redacted the name, but it was under an individual, so I have mentioned it in my project section. And then these are some self-made projects that some of them you can find it on the YouTube. There are YouTube code alongs, like you must have seen how to build an e-commerce website. Not that those are very great projects to mention on a resume, because the people actually, the interviewers, the people actually who go through your resume have seen like hundreds of resumes. So the moment you steal projects from YouTube, they know it's a copied project, and that might not earn you any, I would say, good points. So in that regard, even if you are like taking projects from YouTube and all, make sure to give them a twist, because that might actually make them unique. Because essentially, a lot of projects on YouTube can be given a twist. Like for example, let's say you make a Twitter clone. Now Twitter clone can be modified to make it look like a mental health council forum, something like that. And that actually appeals to the interviewers because they find it interesting. Okay, the student has done something different, and they might even ask about it. At least I was asked about one of my projects in one of my interviews for SIP. And one more another that's like very important thing is mentioning metrics. So when I say metrics, I mean by whatever you're doing, what impact does it have? Like these are some metrics, but these are like ML related metrics. But if I give you a general example of a metric, it would be something like you did something and that increased user engagement by X percentage. This increased efficiency by, let's say, 50%. Those kind of metrics are really helpful because it gives perspective on how important your work was. And this is applicable to both projects and work experience. Now, moving along to the next section, that's coursework. In coursework, you don't mention every course you have ever taken, but you just mention the relevant course according to the profile you're applying. Let's say you're going for a SDE role, so you'll definitely include your algorithms course. You will include a few other courses related to probability statistics, linear algebra, the kind of courses that show okay, you are a strong algorithms person, you're a strong computer science person, those kind of courses. This is especially important for people who are not from CS backgrounds. So there's a bit hack towards it too. Let's say if you have not done a course in college on campus, let's say you did ML, but you did it from Andrew NG or some other place. So you can just add an asterisk or something like this and mention online or not done as a part of college curriculum. This is also relevant. Mentioning relevant coursework always helps, gives the interviewer perspective of what was your formal education about. So these are some examples of how people mention it. The middle one is the example of how it is visible in our college superset resume format. Now coming on to this section is totally optional. You might mention it, you might not mention it, but this section is important as in there is something called as an ATS, that's applicant tracking system or something like that. So it says technically a computer that passes your resume for keywords, because they use AI to find if your resume, if your profile is a good match for the job role or not. So adding a lot of technologies over here that of course you have obviously worked with will help your resume getting shortlisted, because you might not have done a project in every of the technologies. Like there was a language called Haskell. I studied it as a part of my POPL course, Principles of Programming Language, and there was this language called Verilog, which I studied as a part of my digital design course. But both of these languages I have not professionally worked in, like I did not have any work experience related to them, and I do not have any projects related to them, but they should find a mention on my resume. So this is the perfect section to mention them. Now coming on to the position of responsibility. So this section I would say is not one of the most important sections when it comes to SIP IT specifically, but you might, by the end of second year, you might not have a lot of things to fill up your resume with. So this is a good section. So you can just mention, okay, what you did and what was its like impact. Uh, for considering for off campus, this actually helps paint a picture of like your all round overall personality. Okay, you are not just let's say a nerd or a geek. You know how to speak, you know how to manage people, you are a person that knows how to work in teams. For off campus, this is good in that way. Now, let me summarize the key points. So, one of the most important things is to share resume with, let's say, 500 other people, your good peers, your seniors specifically, to like ask for review, ask for feedback. Not every feedback would be important, but yeah, it will like help you iterate and like improve your points. In fact, I even go as far as to like forward my resumes to other college kids that were my friend at a point of time, maybe JE preparations, and get their feedback to improve my resume. Always use bullet points in your resume. Like none of the slides I've shared in the past would have used a paragraph. There are some people that start writing paragraphs in resume. You have to strictly use bullet points and make sure they end in the same line that they start with. Spacing and lines should look neat, as in don't make very short lines and don't make very long ones. I know it's very hard, but if some humans reviewing it, it's very easy to read. Also, always keep it single page. Some people who are like kind of overachiever sort that have done like 10 internships or made 20 projects, those kind of people have an urge to extend their resumes to, let's say, 2 pages, 3 pages. But please don't do that. Nobody has that much time to go over a resume. On an average, an interviewer sees your resumes for like 10 or 20 seconds. They just take a glimpse, see the key points, and like then ask you on that. So always keep it single page no matter what. Also, yeah, this I have covered. Try to use numbers to show achievements. Like I'll show in one of, I think, one of the resumes that I prepared for sharing. But yeah, in general, use bullet points. Use numbers. Like one of the great example of manipulating with numbers is, instead of writing a JEE mains rank, some people can say, I was in top 0.5 percentile of all the attempters of among 1 million students. That kind of way is a good way to like reflect your achievement and just to give them an idea of the scale. Okay, you are in top 0.5 percentile. Yeah, try to keep an equal number of bullet points. This is not as strict, but again, looks good that you have consistently, okay, let's say 2 or 3 bullet points per experience. Each point should be optimally written, as in, again, the same thing. Don't make your points too short or too long. Try to keep them at least like 75% filled. It looks good. It looks nice. Use various section words to start statements. That is organized, advocated, facilitated, gathered. Don't start with something else like I did this, I did that, I worked at. No, developed, aggregated, estimated, used, built, implemented, conducted, analyzed. Check carefully for any grammar and spelling mistakes. This is a must. It's a huge turn off if you send your resume to someone and they're reviewing it and they find a spelling mistake. So yeah, this is, be honest on your resume. If you stretch the truth, make sure you can back it up. So no one's gonna sit and verify, okay, if you have actually built that thing or not. Okay, he built the e-commerce site. Okay, he worked at X startup and this is the work he did. No one can verify that, to be very honest, and no one has the time to. But like honesty and integrity is very important. And if you like even want to stretch the truth a bit, just make sure you can back it up. But just don't straight away lie on a resume. You will most likely get caught. And the last point is, know everything you write on a resume really well. Like you should be well versed with every word that you mention on a resume. Let's say if I'm mentioning Verilog on my resume, I should know anything related to Verilog, or I should have a good explanation or why I don't know this area. Because interviewer can just see any keyword and ask you about that. So now I'll quickly share with you one of the resumes. This was a resume of one of the persons during before their SIP. This is the on-campus superset format. Details have been redacted. So if you see, this person has not mentioned very long. Perhaps this person was not confident in very long. But if you see, this person is a computer science guy and would have definitely studied very long. For projects, bullet points have been made consistent, that is 2 each. For experience, you might not find consistency in the bullet points. That is because the duration of time that they have worked at a single place is very different. This is almost more than a year, whereas this is 2 months, 2 months, 3-4 months. But at your level of experience, you might just have like one work X at max, or maybe 2 work X, and it's very less likely that they might span over a year. So you should try to like make the bullet points consistent, arrange them in a line. So these 3 of them are self projects that the person made it by themselves or took inspiration from the internet and give it a twist. This one's again the SOP one. This is we like already been through. This we already went through. And then this is the last section, that is the volunteer experience. So again, a second year guy might not have a lot of things to fill the resume with. So all these sections really come in handy. So if you see, there's a way of presenting an information. So this guy was in Nirman core, but if you clearly read this, this shows okay, this guy had some impact, and it actually gives some advantage. Like some really big companies do prefer volunteer experience. If you're applying for masters, if you're applying to anywhere, US or places like that, they hugely value volunteer experience and things like that. But for on campus, resume might not play that big of a role. But yeah, this is one of the decent examples of a resume. I'll quickly share one more resume with you, and then we can hand it over to Astha. Okay. So this is the resume of some IIT guy. Again, just to be very clear, this person is like as a topper. Like he was a JE topper and then he was top at IIT. And but just to give you a sense of how to make a good resume, I am presenting this. But please, this is a very extraordinary resume, so don't use it for comparison. So if you see achievements and award section, so all of the achievements are unique and kind of like at a national level, not at a school level. Like you won't say ki in your inter-hostel quiz or something you got a first prize, or even something that's like intra-college. Prefer not to write it, but if you like have a lot of space, you can use it. But use it for national achievements and awards. Work experience, as told, it's clear. Coming on to projects, we see this person smartly used this course project. Like one of the example that I give you was for OOP project. This year, a lot of CS students had their Disco projects too. So this guy essentially in the project section wrote his operating systems course project, wrote his compiler design course project, and then ML related course project. So this is what 50% of his project section is filled with his course projects. This is what he did for GSOC, GSOC, DevSOC. IIT, this programming club is IIT Kanpur's DevSOC. So these are the 3 projects that he built for them. And his final project is the one he built for some hackathon. There are like a lot of hackathons, like we have Flipkart Grid this year too. There's an Adobe hackathon, and you might find a PNG hackathon. And there are like a lot of hackathons in which you can participate and use that project here too. Even we have some hackathons that are hosted by our college too. So participating in them might really help. And then you can actually mention your competitive programming stats too in your resume. This is this thing I think I did not cover this, but this is actually really important. Some of the companies, Google for example, might prefer candidates who have good code forces ratings or like do competitive programming actively. So yeah, this is an important section. It's not necessary. Like if you don't do competitive programming, it's completely fine not to mention it. But if you do it, please do mention these things. And yeah, technical skill is again the same thing. The famous Verilog example. So this guy did not mention Verilog anywhere in his resume, but yeah, he must have done it somewhere. So that's why he mentioned this here. And then relevant coursework, and then positions of responsibility. So again, the reason this resume is 2 page is this is something called as a master resume. So what a lot of people do is they add everything that they have done in life in the resume, and then according to the job profile, according to the role, they just remove projects and they just remove sections. So now this guy might remove all the ML related projects from this section if he's, let's say, not applying to an ML role, and vice versa, that this guy might just mention the ML projects if he's applying to an ML role. And same goes for achievements. He might remove some of the achievements. But this is a master resume. Normally, resumes are just 1 page, and it's appreciated to be kept that way. I think, yeah, this is what I had to say. Now over to Nilay.
Thanks for the insights, Ayush. Our third speaker is Asta, who you might know as the past wave C Cordy, who is currently interning at Google as a software engineer. Asta will speak about the interview process for SIPs, give a few tips for the same, and also talk about the process for dualites. Asta, you can take it away.
So, hi. Thank you for the introduction, Nilay. I did want to add on something that Niranjan touched upon, which was please do make a good friend group who is also preparing with you, because I did that and I would say that I would not be in this company if it was not for that. One thing that I personally did was me and my friends made an Excel sheet, and we would update that sheet with the progress that we have made every day. So, like, we would just update the number of questions we've done, and honestly, that fosters very good competition. If I am seeing 3 reds on my section of the sheet for consecutive 3 days, I will do it out of shame. So that is one thing I would really recommend to you guys. Yeah, so coming to the how to give a good interview part. So the way that these processes go is that you have a coding round and then you have interviews. So generally, there are 2 to 3 coding rounds. This depends on the company, that it's company dependent, and there can be one HR round. Most of the companies don't have an HR round for internships, as far as I know, but there might be one. And these interviews have easier questions than coding rounds, as far as I have seen. So coding rounds, they do try to filter out most of the crowd, so they have a bit harder, medium to harder type of level of questions. Whereas in interviews, they do want to hire you. That's like the way that these things work. They want to hire you. You just have to pass it. So they will ask more fundamental questions which are not way too difficult technologically. Like, they won't ask you tries or those very like complicated concepts. They'll ask you TP, graphs, trees, which are more fundamental, and something that will show them your thought process and how you are solving the problem. Okay, so in general, the most companies will mainly focus on your DSA questions, which are these coding questions. Some companies do ask a very basic level of system design, not exactly system design, but not DSA either. Like, they'll ask you to um, like make structures and formulate like a game, maybe, like formulate tic-tac-toe or something. So that's not exactly DSA lead code, but it's also not system design, so somewhere there. But this is for very specific companies. So yeah, just keep this in mind. And most people do ask OOP, DBMS, DSA fundamental theory. This will not take up much of the interview though. Like, max they'll spend 10 minutes on this, and it is not overly important. but it's better if you can answer those questions well. Again, it's not going to be something that's extremely difficult, just the fundamentals. Okay, what is inheritance? Can you give me an example? Stuff like that, right? So these things are covered in your courses. I personally did not give more than a single day to each one of these subjects to just brush them up. And questions on your resume and project. So personally, the most companies I know do not even look at the resume, but they might ask you, "Oh, what was like the most difficult project that you did, or whatever." And if you have given both these other things on your resume, they might want to check if you're a credible person or not. So that's one thing. Just mostly high level during internships, though. So that's okay. Now, how do we prepare for interviews? So one thing is that some companies don't make you code on compiling supported IDs. Okay, so like specifically, let's take an example of Google. They had a notepad kind of an ID where there was no even color highlighting, as far as I remember. Like how VS Code where they highlight colors of class, keywords, etc. Nothing was there. So, and that's true for a lot of companies. So you should be in practice of writing correct code, and like code that compiles without relying too much on the compiler. It's okay if like your code has thode bahut idhar udhar bugs. That's okay. They are not going to hold it against you, but at least most of the code should be right, and it should be clean code. One thing that I would suggest is keeping the mindset of you coding on, let's say, competitive programming or lead code a bit different than interviews. So in interviews, it's appreciated if the like variable names that you're using make sense. Don't have string s, string s1, string s2. No, like if the string is like representing the number, or like let's say the words, have string words. You get what I mean? Like the variables should make sense. The more code, like imagine when you're writing the code that you're writing in a very huge code base, and people who don't know anything about this piece of code are gonna be reading this. How are you gonna code it? Code it like that. Okay, so that is something that interviewers do appreciate. Don't get too caught up in it, like, but yeah, keep this in your head. Time and space complexity is super important. So this is something that lead code pay, coding rounds pay, they won't ask you. In interviews, I have seen them ask this 90% of the times. Every single time you're proposing an algorithm or you're coding an algorithm, after that, they will ask you what is the time complexity of that. Space complexity is light, but time complexity is 100% they'll ask you. So be sure that you know. Be sure that, okay, if you are using hash maps in your code, what is the time complexity for this particular function? Agar main find kar rahi hu, so what's the time complexity for a stack and a hash map? These things are important and are asked in interviews. They won't like ask you ek line ka, but it'll be important. So that is one thing. While you're preparing for it, GFG is a very good resource because most people have put up their experiences with that particular company. And in general, companies have favorite topics. I have, like, as far as I have seen. So if you know that, like, you won't be blindsided, right? Like if you know that they're going to ask trees, you can revise it beforehand. So that is one thing that I would definitely recommend. Similarly, read the SIP chronicles, contact the seniors who were shortlisted the last year, or who are at that company. It's super important. High level idea of resume I have mentioned already. For the HR round, as I said, most internship companies don't ask and have an HR round, but in general, the vision and mission of the company does play an important role in the HR round. So just read up on the company that you have been shortlisted. That's like the bare minimum you can do, right? Just read up on the company that you have been shortlisted in and try to cater your answers to their vision statement or mission statement. So that is one thing. And give mock interviews. So uh, interviews can be a bit harrowing for some people who are not used to like, obviously having a presence when you're coding. So it's better to have these mock interviews to get rid of the hesitations that you might have. During the interview, this is the most important slide of my presentation. So during the interview, how are you supposed to conduct yourself, right? One thing is, always keep a pen and paper handy. This will be a coding interview, so you will need to make your own notes and figure things out on your own. So yeah, one thing is that the most important thing in an interview is thinking out loud. Okay, they are not just testing your coding skills here, they are also seeing how you are able to formulate your thought process and how you are breaking down the problem in your head. This is the most important part of an interview. So even if you like, don't say something extremely stupid on like, don't think that out loud maybe, but things that maybe are preliminary ideas which do make sense but need improvement, speak them out, right? Like, I think this could be a DP problem, and then maybe go from there, right? You don't need to have the algorithm out in like a second. Go from the most basic solution to the end one. Some interviewers might even prefer for you to have like a brute force solution and then you optimizing that going from there, right? So these things make a good impression and this is what they are testing. So you need to be thinking out loud all of the time. Okay. And most of the times they will give you a problem statement which is very incomplete. Okay. If it's not making sense to you, it maybe they want it to not make sense to you. Okay. So the second most important thing is to ask them questions. Okay, they have given you something extremely arbitrary. उसने बोल दिया make a tic-tac-toe game. Like, you should have more context, right? So ask clarifying questions. Even for basic lead code problems, what are the things that you would want to check in a problem that you're reading? You check the constraints, right? To get an idea of what kind of a time complexity they are expecting. Ask them what the constraints are, right? So these things will make a good impression and will make you get a better idea of the problem. If you don't understand the problem that they are asking you to solve, ask ask many questions till you do. There's no point of solving a problem that they are not even asking you, right? So questions are never a problem. Don't hesitate in that area at all. Okay, so now let's say they have given you the question, you have thought out loud. Discuss, let's say you have an algorithm that you think might work, right? This is not lead code. You can't just code it and be like, oh, ekdam hi galat solution kar diya, now I'll try it again, right? So think about the edge cases before you start actually coding the problem. And think about these edge cases loudly. Like, they should know that you're thinking about, oh, like this could be a corner case, this could be a corner case. So though thinking about edge cases and corner cases is something that they will want you to think about and will help you also while formulating the algorithm to solve the question. So that is another important part. It's okay to stutter and taking some time to think, asking questions. All of these things are very much okay. Don't worry about it. And don't start coding out the solution before you have discussed your approach. Because again, it doesn't make sense for you to code something that they know that the interviewer knows is wrong. So that's why normally thinking out loud helps, because the interviewer will tell you that no, don't code this or whatever. This is another important thing. So interviewers will be giving you hints and will be trying to guide you in a direction because they know the solution to the problem, right? So when you're thinking, they'll tell you, oh, okay, but what about this? So if they are asking you that, that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're saying is wrong, but you just need to think about that case and prove that, okay, my solution can work, or understand that your solution can't work and think of another solution, right? So that is very important. In fact, in Google, I was talking to some of the people who do interview, and they said that this is one of the more important things that they look into, is that can the person who is giving the interview catch on to hints? Are they receptive to feedback? Are they receptive to the direction that is being given to them? So this is super important, and this is what also makes interviews not as hard as coding rounds for me personally, and I think would be the same case for you, is that when you're writing in a coding round, you have no guidance at all. But in an interview, the most basic things will be kind of hinted at by the interviewer. So it's easier in that sense. And uh, another thing is, if you let's say you forgot how a priority queue is defined in C++, you can ask your interviewer that. It's okay, it's not gonna give a bad impression. They understand that these things are written with reference most of the time. So if you want some help with regards to syntax, you can always ask them. Last thing, which seems like it should be obvious, but I want to clarify, is do not try to cheat. I know that it's super easy to just like look inside your phone and search it up on ChatGPT, but interviews me, it's extremely obvious. It's the most obvious thing. So don't try to do that. If you're bombing the interview, bomb it. Don't cheat, right? And another thing is, sometimes you might feel like the interviewer is not going as well, but that's not always the case. For example, my first Google interview, I thought it went fine. I didn't think it went ekdam hi excellent, and that was the case with a lot of other people who were interviewing. And we did get selected for the second round, and the second round ended up going better than the first one. So understand that you have multiple rounds of interviews, and there's no point of getting disheartened at the first one, at the first step, right? So that's one thing. And this is something that I want to really focus on. Remember that they really want to hire you. If they have shortlisted you from the CR, right now they will look for all reasons to hire you. And unless you give them an extremely strong reason to not hire you, then that's on you. So don't be that nervous. It's okay. Be chill. The interviewer is chill. And yeah, keep this at the back of your head, and I think you will be fine. As I said, the interviewers normally have easier questions than CR. So if you have already cleared the CR, you have nothing to worry about, right? That's it on the interview side. Before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to cover this topic specifically for dualites. This is something that nobody else covers, but I think was super important for the journey. So dualites have a year-long PS, and when you take an SIP, if you don't know this already, this is important. If you get an SIP, you can't sit for a year-long PS. You can only sit for second semester PS. And this is true even for the single degree students. First semester PS is not there for SIP folks, no matter dualite or singleite. Okay, now dualites mean this sounds like a very big trade-off, because we've always kind of been like, हाँ एक साल internship करनी है, then उसी company में place होना है, right? But what is the trade-off here? So one thing I would say is that if your CG is kind of on the lower side, then to 100% you should be targeting SIPs, because summer internships के लिए companies don't um, have that much focus on your CGPA. I'm not going to say not at all, but they don't have that much focus on your CGPA. People with very low CGs have gotten very good SIPs too. So this is a very good opportunity for you to capitalize on. Now for people who are in the mid CGs or high CGs, SIP is still a good idea, because most sought after companies do come for summer internships, and PS is generally unpredictable in this case. For example, my seniors had Uber, and I was banking on Uber to come for my year, but they did not come last year, right? And they came this year. Basically, things are not predictable. AS can be unreliable. SIP is something for sure you are getting in your hand right now. So that is one thing that is good. Healthy PPO conversion rates for most summer internship companies is generally true. I would say it's true for a lot of PS companies too. So for in terms of PPO, for any company that you are sitting for or are hoping to get in PS, I would say keep your stats ready. Ask around to people who have been in the companies or etc. What is the PPO conversion rate? Because this is what matters at the end, right? Like your PPO, you want to be placed. So stats are important even if you want to sit for PS. Have an have a good enough idea ki what are the PS stations that will be available to you at your current CG or at your expected CG, right? So that is one thing that I would say is important. Um, Also, when you sit in, like when you have a summer internship, you do get the option of sitting for first sem placements, which is not given to dualites who are doing double sem PS. So that is a good thing. If you don't already know, first semester CS placements have better, bigger companies in general, and second semester normally have startups. Don't quote me on this, please, but like look up the companies that are coming and decide for yourself. SIPs, so summer internships can be daunting. The prep can be a bit harsh, but it's always going to come in handy. It's going to come in handy for your placements. It's going to come in handy if you later decide you want to do PS. There are a lot of good companies that come for interaction roles, which take an interview before taking you as a PS student. So it'll help there. And it does help in CS courses. You will have DAA or whatever that those courses get a bit easier when you have context already. You get earlier clarity on placements too when you are setting an SIP. Okay. Now for people who are in the higher CG range, I would say that you should decide a baseline according to your CGPA. So I was also one of the higher CG people. So what I had done was I had listed down all the companies that had come last year for SIP, and I had decided कि okay, these are the companies that I will sit for, and इसके बाद I won't sit at all because I think I can get a better PS station, right? So decide that line for yourself कि which companies are better in SIP, which companies are better in PS, and where can I get, right? So that's important. And obviously, do not consider the internship stipend as a deciding factor. That is very irrelevant in the long run. Okay, maybe a company in PS is paying you 1.5 for a year, and yahan pe you will think ki, oh, I'm getting 1 lakh only for 2 months. Does not matter. You are going to be working at that company for a much longer time. So please don't keep stipend as a deciding factor. Keep the company and their work and their culture as the deciding factors. So yeah, that's it from my side. Over to Nilay, and we can start the Q&A now.
Yeah, thank you, Asta, for the insights. We'll be moving on to the Q&A session. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or drop it in the chat.
Okay, so we have a question here. I think I'll take this question. What are the level of questions in coding rounds? So, in the companies that come in the first week, I would say the questions are between lead code, medium to hard. I wouldn't say maybe one question, like you'll have like two, three questions in your coding round, and maybe one of them will be lead code hard, but most of them will be like medium to hard or medium-ish. So, this is in the first set of companies, the companies that come in the first 1 2 months, and after that, even then, it's usually lead code medium to hard is what I would say. And yeah, so if you are comfortable solving lead code mediums and able to solve lead code hards, then you are in a great place. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, somebody has asked on the live stream, should they focus on lead code or do projects?
Does anyone want to take up this question? Asta or Ayush?
Yeah, I'll take this up. For SIP, I would say if you have one or two projects, that's fine. Mostly focus on DSA, please, because projects and resumes are just, I would say, an additional factor, but I don't think it's decisive. DSA is what's decisive. So yeah, focus on lead code more, but just get one, two projects on a resume, and it should not take much time. You can actually take some projects off YouTube or some GitHub repositories, and then just like code along yourself. I'll take this one. For non-CS people, how important is CS fundamentals? For everyone, CS fundamentals are important. Uh, Google does not ask CS fundamentals, but Arista did, Intuit did, Uber does ask OOP related things. Salesforce will ask. So a lot of companies do ask OOP and DBMS. So I would say it's like quite important for completeness.
Okay, I'll take the next question. What type of problems does lead code expose you, or that code forces doesn't? So in code forces, the first two, three questions in a div two, or like the first four, five questions in a div three, are very logical heavy, and the data structures used are not as much. So like you won't find questions on DP and graphs on code forces until like a 1600, 1700 rating. So that's where lead code comes in the picture. You'll find a lot of medium difficulty questions on topics like DPN and graphs. So that's why lead code has that extra edge over code forces. But still, doing code forces is great because if you're able to solve those 1700, 1800 DP and graph questions, you are at a great place for your SIPs. So yeah, that I hope that answers your question, Arno.
Aryan has asked a question. Any specific advice for resume and interview for non-CS students?
Asta, can you take that?
Honestly, there's no specific advice. Companies that are taking electronic students in the process and don't have a cutoff or whatever, don't care if you're from electronics or CS as long as you know everything that is needed to be known. So no specific advice from my side. If Ayush or Niranjan have any, then please do tell.
Yeah, nothing. Same. It doesn't really matter as long as you have the same skill set. So yeah.
Rajat has asked on the live stream, are 2 pages allowed for a resume?
See, there is no limit, hard limit. You can put up a 50-page thesis too. But if you submit a 2-page resume, uh, like I can assure you, no one will go over those 2 pages. 1 page is sort of, if you are in software industry, 1 page is sort of the limit. And this is not only applicable to college, but even if you have like 3-4 years of experience.
I'll take up the recent question. So, no, PS does not consider external internships into as a PS or whatever. There can be workarounds to this. I'm not going to speak about them here. I would say talk to seniors who got an SIP last, or I mean, in my batch. So this year, and who are dualite, so they'll probably be helpful. But PS division will not consider as a PS if you get an off-campus internship. So that's your answer. And to answer Shivansh's concept about ML concepts, no, you don't need it. Um, unless you've put something on your resume and this company asks you about resume, no, you don't need ML concepts.
Adding on the ML thing, there are some companies that hire on ML roles. I think DevRev is such a company. So for that, maybe knowing ML concepts will be helpful. So if you are interested in ML and want to work in such companies, having a ML background will surely help.
Ritu Kumar has asked any specific topics which we need to focus on for DSA.
I'll take this one. So I have mentioned in my slides also, the main topics are like I mentioned 4 or 5 or 6. Basically, two pointers, sliding window, binary search and answer, DP, and graphs. These are like the main topics that most companies ask. So make sure you do all these topics. And then there are like a few extra topics you can do later on, but make sure you do all these topics mainly first. Okay. The question Ronak has asked: does the current developments in AI industry have changed the CSIT hiring landscape, and what will happen 2 3 years from now? So as of now, it's still the same. The last 2 3 years, they're still asking DSA and they're still asking problem solving skills and they're testing all that. So like it's again, you never know what happens in the future, but for the last 3 4 years it's been pretty consistent and I don't see it going away that quickly in the next 2 years. But if Ayush and Asta have anything to add, please feel
Yeah,
free.
I'll just add to that. So you might have seen there is a very boom in AI jobs. So yeah, that's true. So there used to be like 10 odd AI jobs in the past, and now they're like 100. But always remember, software industry has thousands of jobs. So if that's what your question is, this hiring landscape won't change at all. Not for 2 3 years, but for 5 years, because this has been that way for a really long time. Because you see, they like in the very recent pre-placement talk of Google, you if you would have attended, they actually told about that they hire generalist. They don't hire people with a specific skill set, but people who have clear computer science fundamentals and have decent problem solving skills. And DSA is the most straightforward way of testing that. So considering the software engineering roles, the non-ML ones, the hiring scene won't change and it will be the same.
Kef has asked a question: are certifications helpful at all?
I would say they are like good to mention, but they don't help you a lot because there are like tons of certifications around. There is actually no way of establishing their authenticity and if you actually know the thing or not. Yeah, but I would say the knowledge is more important than the certificate. But yeah, it certainly won't help you, but won't hurt you either.
A question has come up in the live stream. Can you tell some ways to get projects as a first year?
Uh, See YouTube videos, like a lot of projects lying around there. Like learn some tech stack, learn some language, and learn by building something. Like scratch your own itch, I would say. So yeah, that is one great way. If you like for a first year students, I think that's the only practical way of getting some project on their resume. Later on, you can actually start approaching professors to get more legit and actual projects. But for now, yeah, YouTube should be good. YouTube and GitHub.
There's a
Niranjan, would you like to take this one? DSA in Python or CPP?
I might be a bit biased because I have only done it in C++, but the majority of the community does do it in C++. I think around 70 to 80% of people do use C++, and even in your course curriculum, you'll have DSA in C++ itself. So doing it in C++ will surely help in that. But again, if you are comfortable in Python, it's totally fine. Like in the end, the companies are gonna test your problem solving skills. So that is more important. And what language you use is not that important. But again, since majority of the people use C++, it might be better to do it in C++. But again, I might be biased because I have only done C++ all my life. So yeah.
Amish, Normally off-campus internships in big tech is like very hard to get because all of these companies come to the campus and you can only sit like once in every 6 months in that company. There's a cool down period. Regarding startups and all, so just get a good resume, get some really good open source contributions if that's possible, because these are some things that startups value. And then just send your resume around. Cold mailing is the key, or like getting connected to some bits alums on the LinkedIn. Aryan, I think that's fine. You just need to know what it is used for. Your knowledge should not look superficial. From a SIP perspective, they won't go into detail.
One more thing, like for Amish's question about off-campus SIP, you will need to keep an eye out for the big companies. Normally, big companies have a particular way that they hire for off-campus. Uske sivai they don't. So cold mailing in really big companies won't help. So just keep an eye out for those. Search it up. They normally have a schedule for these kind of things. So search up key last year when it happened and keep a list ready with you so you don't miss out on an opportunity. And cold mailing will work for startups. For startups, I would suggest like going on LinkedIn and connecting with Bitsalams that work there. And even if not Bitsalams, a lot of times non-bits people are also kind of helpful, but in general Bitsalams will be better. So just go to LinkedIn, there'll be a people tab and filter out results from there, message them on LinkedIn, send them your resume, and that's how it normally works. So, but off campus, I would say, is definitely very difficult job. You won't get that many responses, so be ready for that kind of a process.
Kartikeya has asked on the live stream, what do they ask apart from DSA and IT related stuff?
Okay, I'll just talk about the Google experience and maybe Ayush can talk about the rest. In Google, they only asked DSA, so they didn't even touch our resume or any projects or anything else. They just asked us to introduce ourselves and then they went on with the DSA questions. Uh, Other companies, I think Ayush might have a better idea.
So, I gave the interviews for Sprinkler, Atlassian, and Arista. So, in Atlassian, they just gave me a coding problem, and in the second part, they actually discussed one of my resume projects. But they actually discussed it from more of an HR perspective. They wanted to know my teamwork skills, that kind of a thing. So yeah, and in Sprinkler, guy just picked one line of my resume and then asked me on that. I mentioned something regarding WebGPL and WebGL and WebGPU. So he asked me, "Do you know what is OpenGL?" Just to check if I'm just not throwing those terms around. And once I answered that, he just moved on to the next thing. In Arista, interview just randomly picked off one of the projects and just tried to ask me stuff regarding it, just to verify if I'm not lying on my resume. But yeah, they don't usually go in depth, and they usually ask very less of the resume. Uh, in HR, or there's a round called HM, hiring manager round. So in those, they might want to see some teamwork skills or how you tackle tough problems or some of your life experiences maybe. But this is like less prevalent. Mostly it would be DSA and your CS fundamentals.
Harsh has asked on the live stream, is the level of questions in Striver Street and lead code contests similar to that in SIP?
I would
To
say
be
that, yeah, Asta, please go on.
I would like Ayush and Niranjan to also chime in about this, but I felt that the coding round questions were generally tougher, but I'm not sure if Striver's sheet at the end has much tougher questions or something. My point is, when you are preparing whatever source you're using, make sure that you are also practicing lead code level hard or whatever, coding ninjas hard level questions too. Those will be, I think, a good metric. But yeah, please Niranjan and Ayush add on to this.
I would say like there is no certain answer to this question. If you compare with day one companies like Rubrik and Google, so certainly the questions are on the tougher side. That would be a bit hard, but some of them would be definitely similar difficulty would be covered in Strava sheet too, because they're like 450 questions, but not in that number. But if you go on to the companies that come later in the time, let's say Intuit or let's say other companies, they might not ask that tough of questions. Like at least in Arista, at least in Atlassian, questions were like fairly simple and were like lead code level only. So it essentially depends on company to company. Some company can ask really tough questions that are like found nowhere, and some company can just pick a question from lead code and ask like Deesh or did it. Like I think one of the questions in Deesh was straight away from Strava sheet.
One thing to add on to this is like a good enough idea of what is the difficulty level of the questions that they are asking and what topics they prefer asking. So that is one thing. Also, I would say if you are solving Striver's 450 wali list, and if you don't have that much time, make sure you are not sitting and solving every question of every topic. You won't get the time. Make sure that you are leveling up every single time. Don't get too comfortable in the easy medium questions and keep solving those again and again.
Okay, guys, thank you for answering all the questions. Electronic meet link will be shared along with the YouTube live stream link shortly. Thank you.